Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Thinking Like a Bank, where we show you how to think like a bank using the same strategies and principles that banks use to help you find more financial freedom in your life. I'm your host, Sari Ibrahim. So we've already talked about the different core principles or strategies of thinking like a bank, such as having safe and predictable income, saving on taxes or lowering your tax liability, owning or investing real estate. And I have with us today a special guest to share some more knowledge on this or expertise on this, to kind of share his opinions and experience of thinking like a bank, or how one should think like a bank or could think like a bank. I have with us today Mr. Marcus Norman. He is the host of the General Style podcast and CEO of Marks Real Estate Investment Holding Company. It's a property management company based in Virginia. He started an investment firm that seeks to achieve higher rates of returns for his investors, board members, and market partners through traditional markets and alternative markets through foreign and domestic. Located primarily in the 757 area and growing, currently manages $330,000 in assets under management. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sari. I appreciate it. This is awesome. I'm excited. I am so excited. Thank you for inviting me. This is an honor. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. And for the audience to know, I was actually a guest on Marcus's podcast. What was it, last year? I think
late last year, towards the end of last year. Yeah, you were incredible, dynamic, powerhouse, man. He brought down the house on that show because you were my first introduction to my audience for Bank on Yourself. Okay. So it was a complete new concept and it was mind blowing.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. And you too, you're an awesome host, and hopefully my show can catch up to yours.
It will. I hope it surpasses mine. It will.
Before we jump into all the strategies and things we're going to talk about, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this?
Absolutely. So I got into banking because when I left the military in 2014, I realized that I needed to find a way to replace my income from the military. And so I found myself in the financial services industry. It was the quickest place that I could go without a college degree. Mm-hmm. And so working in finance, I've sold everything from bank policies, life insurance, whole life insurance, term life insurance, open checking accounts, small business loans, big business loans, you name it. And so that's how I got my start. I started in real estate and branched off from there. Real estate is my core, which is why I have the property management and real estate investment company. Mm-hmm. But that funded every other investment since then.
Okay, nice. Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about what exactly do you do with the real estate company? Like, can you give us an example of something you recently worked on that kind of gives us more information on what you do with the real estate holding company?
Absolutely. So the real estate holding company was inspired by Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I wanted to start in business, and I first started in business with real estate. House hacking is what most people call. So I was house hacking my first house, and I realized it was the quickest amount of money that I could ever make in a short amount of time. And so diving in from that, I literally had a security deposit, first month's rent, last month rent, just from my first initial advertisement. And so the real estate company is a holding company for my real estate assets and my real estate portfolio. I don't do any private, I'm not a realtor, right? I believe in letting the experts be the experts. So I have a realtor who finds me deals and properties, and I invest through him and through his expertise, and I hold the real estate assets in Marks Real Estate Holding Company versus my name.
Okay. Do you have outside investors who invest into your company?
At the moment, no, because I like being the boss. I don't want someone else to tell me what to do just yet. And also too, when you take people's money, you better be ready to execute on it, because people expect a return on their money. And so my business, my investing acumen isn't up to par to where someone can say, Marcus, here's $50,000. I would like a return in the next couple of months. I'm not to that level yet. And so I am not seeking capital in that avenue. I am seeking capital in other areas of business, but not the real estate portion, because real estate is a finite thing.
I agree.
Great question. Great question.
Tell us a little bit more about your banking experience. I want to kind of tie this in with the theme of the podcast of thinking like a bank. So tell us a little bit about your banking experience.
Absolutely. So banking, because I was exposed, I work for, I don't know if I should say the name, but I work for a bank,
Yeah.
right? And working for the bank, I worked for the bank for about 7 years, and I still continue my education in the financial industry, and I still follow it intently to
Mhm.
find out what's the newest trends. And so what I learned was people was not retiring well.
Mhm.
People had money,
Mhm.
and my goal was to get into the banking industry because I thought, okay, if I work in a bank, I'm gonna bump shoulders with millionaires and successful
Uh-huh.
people. And that's not the case. There are more broke people at the bank than rich people, because rich people, people who have money, they send their assistants to go to the bank. I hardly ever rub shoulders with people who had money. But when I did, it was a very off chance occasion.
Yeah.
Like I bumped shoulders into a lady who had she owned 5 McDonald's franchises.
Oh, wow.
So the bank I worked at also had is also where Warren Buffett banks.
Okay.
So can you imagine Warren Buffett? It never happened, but my vision was, what if Warren Buffett walked through that door right now because he wants a cashier's check, or he wants to check his safe deposit box?
Yeah.
That's big, right?
Yeah.
And so to be exposed to that atmosphere and to be exposed to that industry and showed me what the millionaires are doing.
Mhm.
And so bank on yourself is a unique asset class, because I sold life insurance, and I'm familiar with life insurance, whole life, universal life, term
Mhm.
life. And so I realized I need to do what the banks do. I need to mimic what the experts doing. Some people are creative.
Mhm.
I am not. I am not going to reinvent the wheel. I can copy the hell out of you.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
And so I invest in things that banks invest in. So
Yeah.
banks lend their money to real estate.
Mhm.
Bank lends their money to whole life insurance policies,
Mhm.
and that's where banks keep their money.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to do what banks do because it's a proven system. And so that's my experience in banking. And that's the unfortunate side, is that I realized people didn't know what to do with money. And some people had money,
Mhm.
and they didn't know how to make more money from that $10,000 or that $15,000. They didn't know how to make it grow. And me talking to them, I would try to help them,
Mhm.
but as you know, Sari, it
Mhm.
takes a mind shift.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's the hardest part to overcome. So that's my experience with banking. It's extensive, and it's growing, and it's changing every day.
Mhm. What are some ways what do you do to learn more about banking? Like, what are some resources you have? Like, how do you do your research? How do you learn?
So how I learn from tuning in to great podcasts like this. That's how I learn. I'm an audio learner. I'm constantly moving. I'm constantly doing different things. And so I'm an audio learner. So I download podcasts. I listen to your show. I listen along with some others, and I tune in and I dial in. I buckle down
Mhm.
because I'm always on the road. So if I'm sitting in my car, I have turned my car
Mhm.
into a library of knowledge. So whenever
Mhm.
I'm taking a road trip or when I'm going a long distance, I am listening and tuning in, and I'm diving in with you as you educate, as you teach. And that's how I stay. Primarily, that's how I stay. I'm an avid reader. I still read audio books and hard copy. I have a whole shelf full of hard copy books, but mostly the knowledge is out there, and the knowledge is video and audio. That's where most people are tuning in, and that's where the experts are. Um, One day I intend to find a local mastermind
Mhm.
group and join masterminds, because what are experts doing in the same field that I am? And so tuning in and connecting, networking. And I was a part of network marketing. So, but not networking to the sale, to the point of, hey, buy into this program, but networking organically.
Oh, yeah.
I want to network with people who are interested in what I'm doing, and I want to be organically interested in what you're doing. I don't want to just sit here and say, man, Sarah, you putting on weight, you need this tea. That's not networking. You just call me fat. that's not go, that's not real networking. That's not going to work. So I wanted to network with like minds. That's another way that I learned.
Yeah. Okay, I love it. Yeah, I was on a show the other day, and I was talking to these two guys, and I'm like, 30 years ago, if you wanted to learn about banking and financial services, you'd have to go to like a school or a university. You'd have to be well connected with certain people. Nowadays it's entirely free It's everywhere. It's all over YouTube, all over the Apple Podcasts, all over the different podcast platforms. It's literally free information that you can hear experts talk about, what they do, how they did it. And I've been seeing a huge trend of people like becoming entrepreneurs, obviously not just, I've been seeing, but it's obviously a lot of people becoming entrepreneurs, and there's so much free information out there. So yeah, thanks for sharing that for sure. Now let's kind of jump into some more like a little technical pieces of financial security or financial stability. So what are some things, like, for example, if I came to you and I said, hey, Marcus, I want to be more financially responsible, what would you say to me? Like, what are some things that you would say to me that come to mind?
So one of the first things I would investigate how much you're earning, right? And so I know people say it all the time, budget, you got to have a budget. You should have, even if you have a general idea, do you have excess capital that you're sitting on? Right? That's the first point. If you don't have any extra money, my first and foremost recommendation to you is get another job. That's the first step. Once we get a surplus of cash coming in that we don't need, right? Once we establish our emergency fund, it kind of goes along the same lines of the Dave Ramsey plan, but a little modified. Once we get it established emergency funds, it could be 500, it could be 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever you're comfortable is. Then whatever is left, now we can invest that capital. And so one of the things I did is after I was doing real estate, I realized I was sitting on capital, but it wasn't necessarily enough for real estate. So I started researching. I started tuning into podcasts to see what everyone else was doing. And so the biggest thing with investments is barrier to entry, right? Bitcoin is now at what? Thousands of dollars. So the barrier to entry to get one cryptocurrency is too high. So if you only have $500, that's not enough to earn one Bitcoin to earn. So what can you invest in that other people are investing in? And so that's how I started searching and sprawling out. So I would work with that person and say, listen, what do you have? How much are you sitting on? And what's the goal? What are you trying to do? I'm a passive investor. So that's the next piece. I want to figure out what is your investment style. Are you an active investor? Do you want to be heavily involved in the trenches, or do you just want to sit back and collect a check? Do you have a short-term horizon, or do you have a long-term horizon, right? Do you need the money in the next couple months, or do you need the money in the next couple years? And that's the third piece. So I want to figure out, if you're sitting on excess capital, how much, and then what is your goal? And then what kind of investor are you? Right? So that's those three steps. And that's why I would walk someone down and say, okay, if you're sitting on $50,000, hey, I know a real estate investor who's looking for $50,000. I know a gentleman, Mr. Sari Abrim, who has a life insurance policy that may be beneficial to you. And that's the power. The books, one book that I always remember is it talks about the 3 pillars of retirement. And it talks about 401k, retirement, but it also mentions life insurance. And that's a new thing that people don't understand, that life insurance is a part of your retirement, because they think that's not money I'm not going to need right now. How are you protecting your death benefit? But also that life insurance policy is something you need right now. And so what was that book? Shame on me. But it talks about those 3 pillars of retirement and retiring well. Annuities, that's what it was. Annuities, annuities, life insurance, and 401k retirement plans. Paychecks and Playchecks, that's what the book was called. Okay. So very powerful book. So that's why I would step someone onto and walk them through as they came to me and was looking for advice to do what with their capital.
Okay. Now I want to touch on, you mentioned something really important. It's that having those reserves in place. What would you base that off of? Would that be like 6 months of saving, 6 months of your expenses, 1 year of expenses? How would you justify or put a number on what that should be? Like if somebody came to you and said, how much should I save on the side, excluding all my expenses and everything else that I have? What's a good number? How do I figure out that number?
Great question. So how I would figure out that number, or how I would help someone figure out that number, is I'll figure out what their status is. Are you single or are you married? Do you own a car or do you Uber to work? Right? The less responsibilities you have, the less your retire or your emergency fund can be. Okay. So if I'm single, I don't have any kids, I don't have a dog, right? My reserves are going to be significantly different from a married man who has a wife and 3 kids. his reserves are going to be, he needs a significant amount of reserves because of who he's responsible for.
Mhm.
My reserves may just be, or that single individual may just be maybe 3 months of rent for your apartment
Mhm.
and your deductible for your car insurance, which is can range from anywhere from $200 to $1,000.
Mhm.
Once that need is met, you can be as risky
Mhm.
as you want, especially if you're younger, because the one thing that you have on your side is time.
Yep.
You can recover from any catastrophe. So the 20-year-old man who experiences tragedy at 21 will eventually recover from that, right? As long as he stays engaged. But if I'm 50 years old, I don't have a lot of time to recover from tragedy. So my reserves need to be bigger. So I need to assess what you're currently making, and where your status is. Are you responsible for anyone? Are you responsible for a dog? Okay, let's get rid of the dog. If you know, or if that dog means the world to you, then we need to have some reserves because you are now responsible for that dog. If you have a car, you are responsible for that car. What are you driving? Are you driving a Corvette or are you driving a smart car? What's the average maintenance for a smart car versus a Corvette? So that's where my initial assessment is. And that's probably the same assessment that you do with couples or singles. Where are you currently at? What are your current needs? Because we want to make sure we cover those needs before we jump into investing.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and we go into also like definitions. Like for example, like if somebody says, you know, I want to retire, well, what does that mean to you? What does the word retire mean to you? Everybody has different definitions. For some people, it could be traveling the world. For some people, it's, you know, I never want to have to worry about bills. We like to identify what people mean by certain things, you know, like if somebody says, I want a lot of money, well, what does that mean? Like, let's put on paper, like how much is a lot of money to you, you know, and what can we do to get there? What are some steps you take to get there? I'm a big fan of financial coaching and not just financial advising. You know, coaching is like, what are we going to do together to get there? You know, advising would just be like, just do this ABC, you know. I love financial coaching. I love all the things you've mentioned and talked about. Now, I want to talk about your podcast. You know, you're doing a really good job with your podcast, Gentleman Style Podcast. Okay, so a couple of questions about this. One, what made you want to start the podcast? And two, what's your intent with the podcast? What's the overall goal with it?
Absolutely. Great questions. So the podcast was started it's called Gentleman Style, and it was started for men, but it recently branched off to men and women. The intent with the show is to deliver the content, the knowledge, the expertise, and put it all in one place, right? If I want to learn about real estate, I can go to Gentleman Style. If I want to learn about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin investing, I can go to Gentleman Style. If I want to learn about alternative investments, right? Investing in things that are not the norm, right? Investing in life insurance, that's not the norm. That's not a money market account at your bank, right? I want to talk about the things that your bank is not going to talk to you about or teach you about. And so that's the goal of the podcast. I want to bring it front and center to you, and you have ready access to something where if you want to learn about a particular subject, I'm going to bring the subject matter expert to you, and my shows are live. And so you can ask the expert. When I had Mr. Sari Abrim, the audience can tune in and not only listen to him, but they can ask him questions right there on the show, live and direct. So we share the contact information of all our guests, and so you can connect with them either on the show or offline. And that's the goal of my show, is to bring you the things, the investment strategies that big thinkers like Sari Abrim is talking about, and put him in a formal one-stop shop location where you can connect with him and tune in with him and ask him questions directly.
I love it. I should have made this live. It would have been a good idea. That's the next step, is to make these live. Yeah, this isn't live, so that would have been a good idea. Yeah,
No problem.
Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So we talked a lot about books. Who are some people you look up to, or favorite quotes, or kind of role models you have?
Some favorite books and role models I have is you're one of them, right? And so all the people that are doing the things that are outside the norm and helping people get to a better place. So some books I mentioned are Rich Dad Poor Dad, Paychecks and Playchecks. That's a life insurance, and it's more of an annuities book, but it talks about the relationship between life insurance and annuities and 401k retirement. And so Rich Dad Poor Dad, everyone says that inspired me to get started in something. I realized that I needed to get started in something. And so my biggest motivator, my biggest inspiration is my dad. My father inspires me, and he supports me in everything that I do today. And he is my drive. Growing up, I witnessed my father working 3 jobs just to support us, to support his family. And so he was never, ever home. And so his expression of love was, you have food in your belly, you have clothes on your back, and you have a roof over your head. And I saw my father working his behind off. And so he is my inspiration. He is why I don't sleep very much. He's the why I work so hard. And so those are some books. And my biggest inspiration, the one man I admire the most above all else, is my father.
Okay, nice. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I love it. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, what are some, as you mentioned so much, what are some things that, like, if for the listeners to resonate with, some things for them to remember from this episode and for them to resonate with? What are some final words you have for them?
Some final words I have for your audience is, but don't ever give up. Believe in yourself, right? The biggest thing that we learned in this COVID-19 recession, this pandemic, is your employer does not give a squat about you, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are sitting on money, this next stimulus, it has just been ratified today. President Biden signed the next wave of stimulus checks. When you get that $1,400, or if you have dependents, $3,600 for each independent child, when you get that capital, don't do the norm, right? Connect with someone, get a mentor, get a coach, right? Get a coach and connect with them and say, Sari, I am sitting on money and I have no clue what to do. Where should I start? What should I do with it? Invest in yourself. That pays the best dividends.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. Yep. I love that. And how can listeners connect with you to learn more about you?
Absolutely. If anyone wants to connect with me or check out what I'm doing or see what I'm up to, because I'm always up to something, you can check me out on YouTube on the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. We're on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, LinkedIn, Audible, Ghana Radio, and radio.com, and Apple Podcasts and Google Play, where all your social media can be found. So look us up, check me out, and connect with me. Or if you want, check us, reach out to Mr. Sari Ibrahim. He knows where I'm at. He can reach out to me anytime. All
right. Thank you so much, Marcus. I really appreciate you having you on the show. I look forward to reconnecting with you soon. I'll be sure to add in all the links you mentioned in the show notes, so this way people could just click on it and meet with you and talk to you. And I look forward to reconnecting with you.
Absolutely. We got to get you back on the show soon, brother.
For sure. Thank you. To learn more about what we do and how we can help you grow more wealth, please visit www.finassetprotection.com. That's FIN assetprotection.com. The topics presented in this podcast are for general information only and not for the purposes of providing legal, accounting, or investment advice. On such matters, please consult a professional who knows your specific situation.